All right, so before we start the painting, I wanted to just talk about my value sketch here. I think this is really important, especially with landscapes and landscapes like this one where we're going to change a bunch of things. And the reason we change things is to get a good composition. And this is the final composition here, but I don't want you to think that I just got this on the first try. Took a few tries. I actually tried it like this first. I was like, oh, like what if most of the composition was in shadow here and then just the scene out there with the mountain and the lake like was in light. And I actually still like this. I actually still might paint it like this after doing it right here. But just to show you how much I do these, I can kind of show you the sketchbook filled with just these simple 3 value sketches. I'm like always doing these, or sometimes I'll do a little bigger like that when I know I'm going to be doing a big painting. I'm just trying to figure out as much of the composition and values as I can here before I start. Like you can see like how many times I did this one. Did this one a bunch of times. So it doesn't just come the first time. You gotta kind of really figure it out. So like when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking in terms of 3 values: a dark, a mid-tone, and a light. And I'm trying to create interesting dynamic shapes and have balance. And so I like to divide the canvas into quadrants and try and balance opposite quadrants, but I don't want it to be perfectly balanced. When you think of balance, you're probably thinking something like that. You want to balance it, but you want dynamic balance. So you want something bigger, something small. You want it to be dynamic. So in terms of my dark shapes, well, just in terms actually of these 3, I have dynamic amounts of them. Like obviously the dominant amount is my mid-tone. There's more mid-tone in this than anything else. And then there's dark and then a little bit of lights. So, I would probably say 50% of this is taken up by mid-tone. And then, probably, I don't know, I'd say maybe even like 35% is taken up by the dark. And then the last 15% are these light areas. So I'm just thinking dynamic that way, but also shapes in these quadrants. So I look at this quadrant here, I got this big dark shape taking up almost half of that, and I look across directly opposite of it and say, all right, what's balancing that out? I want something here. I don't want it just to be completely heavy on there, because that's going to be, it's just going to be lopsided and not interesting. But I don't want it to be even. So that's why I put this tree here. It's this tree here. I just moved it down, made it smaller, and I have that there. It's not taking up nearly as much space as that is. And actually, I feel like I could probably get away with making it even smaller here now that I look at it. If it was something kind of just like that, because the main thing is I'm just thinking about its relationship to that. Same with this, you got all of this dark countered with this dark shape up here, which is the shadow. I'm not afraid to change that. And every quadrant is different. Like this is probably has the most dark space, this is a little less, this is a little less, and this is the smallest. And you kind of have the direction of this kind of going there, and then this hill is going to bring you back down into there. I'm not afraid to move things. Like I just got rid of kind of a lot of stuff down here and just kept, I like this main tree. I like this like little hillside. I'm actually going to put a hiker right there. Dips down. Going to keep this lake. Got a couple white rocks to kind of lead us this way. This tree is breaking up the shoreline, this mountain back here. And this mountain has a strong angle going down to the left. So I countered that by readjusting the top of this back mountain to go, you know, down and to the right. So this is the composition we're gonna be doing. So when I first draw it in with thin paint, this is what I'm gonna be trying to get. All right, we are ready to paint. Glad I got to show you my preliminary sketch, because that's what we're going to be doing pretty much right now, is just transferring that to our canvas, just thinking about the values. And we already have mid-tone here. This is just a wash of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue with paint thinner, wiped with a paper towel. Just kind of guesstimated our little grid to help us draw this in. Notice there's not a grid on there because I'm not going to be drawing this exactly. Got my colors. I got ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, cadmium red, yellow ochre, cadmium lemon, and titanium white. And some Gamblin solvent-free gel. It's my medium here. Just gonna use a number 2 flat brush to draw this in. I'm using my sketch as my reference here, so kind of seeing this tree. I come down into here. This is kind of where our little person's going to be, or hiker. Put another smaller tree right there, like a rock or something. Now remember, all of this is dark. And I'm not going to be copying the light pattern on the tree exactly. I might throw in some branches and light, but right now, not super worried about it. Just trying to block in what I had on my sketch first. For those of you that plein air paint, having a sketch and blocking that out first, as you can see, is going to make things so much easier, because what I'm doing right now is establishing my light and dark. So say if I was out plein air painting and all of a sudden clouds rolled in or just the scene changed for whatever reason, doesn't really matter, because I've already established what's in light and what's in shadow. And I know that might seem scary, of like, oh, well, how are you gonna paint it if it's not there? The more you paint, the more you pick up on patterns. You kind of see how similar a lot of scenes are, and if you know how to paint trees in shadow, you can kind of, you know, they don't need to be in shadow for you to know how to paint them in shadow, for example. So then this lake, this place is so cool. This is in Teton National Park. I went there. It's a very difficult hike to get up there. I did not bring my painting stuff, thank goodness, because I would have probably passed out from exhaustion. It was hard enough going up there without it. It's really cool lake. That's in Teton National Park in Jackson, Wyoming. main thing with painting pine trees like this is to not make them symmetrical looking. I feel like I see it happen a lot. I'm specifically having it come up this high to break the line of that lake. That mountain back there. And I'm going to put a couple rocks on here. Excuse me. All right. I'm going to take a rag with some paint thinner. I'm going to pull out nice values. I'm going to have some of the snow up there. And have a rock there and part of my hiker. It's going to be bright. And then these rocks going up here, it's going to kind of create a dynamic shape like that. These will also be pretty light. You can see with these light shapes, specifically made them all different as well. So I'm becoming my hiker there. He's standing on a rock and have some of that ground being hit with light too. Some snow sitting up there. These rocks kind of heading up towards there. All right, let's start doing some painting. I'm gonna just start with the sky and try and move my way forward. Well, actually, I'm actually going to start with my darkest dark. So I'm going to establish those. Some blue. Some yellow. Some red. It's like I made a green, then I saturate it with the red. Got a little crimson. So I just want to establish some blue and burnt sienna in there. See, paint's pretty thin. Just establishing the dark base that I'm going to build everything off of, but just wanted to get this in because it's hard to get really dark if you put some lights in. So just kind of putting this in, make our life easier later. And I'm just going to get burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, a touch of white. Again, just blocking this out, which we'll put in rocks and everything later, but laying down a base. All right, now let's go to the sky. Work our way forward. The sky is so blue in this. Let's get some white, ultramarine blue. That. Now as I move forward, I'm going to go slightly lighter, but I'm also going to put in some crimson, maybe a touch of burnt sienna. I'm not going to make these mountains as light as they are in the photo. See, it's got kind of like a desaturated purple, because I still want to keep this a mid-tone. Maybe a touch of yellow ochre, just to neutralize it a bit. I'm also going to be not afraid to soften the edge between it and the sky. See, like that, just gonna help sit in the distance more. And I'm not really looking at that so much for drawing or anything, but you can see when you simplify things just down to flat shapes like this, it's not a big deal to make them up. And always be thinking when you're painting stuff in the distance, think cooler, think less contrast between light and dark, softer edges. Like I'm just going to push some of this sky into this. Actually, I wonder If I can push this a little bit lighter, kind of crimson. That's pretty good. Can branch off from this with some more white, still pulling some of that previous color. So I do the snow here. See, as I'm still like allowing it to blend in a bit to the previous color that's down there. We can come back to this later once we get more in. So now this shadow up here, it's kind of staying over here, just making sure it's dark enough. Get some blue, touch of crimson. A little burnt sienna. Again, just thinking of it as simple shape. Simple shadow shape coming down. Just gonna use a similar color just to kind of get some small shadow shapes of trees. If you think about it, you know, a lot of the shadows are on the left side, bottom left of the tree, so I'm just kind of establishing a few of those here, there. So now as I put in the green, I'm not gonna like put all these rocks, I'm just gonna simplify and kind of mainly focus on this hill, which I like. And so I'm gonna mix up a green that's gonna sit well in the distance. So it's gonna be some blue and yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is already desaturated. Saturated yellow, so this should give us like kind of a nice olivey green that sits well in the distance. Touch a little white. Touch of Cadmium and white. Oh. Grass. And I'm trying to do this as loose as I can, as soft as I can, letting stuff blend together because that's going to help sit in the distance. come back over top of this with the rock color, which is I'm going to use some burnt sienna. I'm going to push the rock color a little more red than what you see. It's going to contrast well with the greens. Nice little trick to always have up your sleeve. Burnt sienna, still get a little bit of blue in there. Maybe even a touch of crimson. Push them just a little more pink. But remember, I do want this shape to read as a light value, so I can't make it too dark. Again, soft edges within all these shapes. So you got some rocks peeking out. Just kind of mixing this together. Again, not afraid. I want this paint to blend together. I want those soft edges. That's going to sit in the distance. If it's too crisp, if everything is perfectly crisp it's going to come forward more, and you don't want that. Save that crispness for up here. It's going to add a lot of depth to your paintings. Soft edges here. I think a little more blue, a bit of crimson, some shadows. Notice my brush work kind of going with the direction of the hill there. Really want this to be soft edges. This might take some kind of finessing. I'm just going to get some blue with a little bit of white. create some shadow shapes in this one. Gonna some blue, touch of yellow, a little red. I'm trying to yellow ochre. Seeing how kind of bright can I get my greens in here. I want to make sure I have enough red in this green. I'm gonna actually kind of indicate trees with some vertical strokes here, but you can see even though like I'm adding stuff, everything's soft. Definitely come back to this part later. Keep finessing it, but I want to move on so I can see what everything looks like together. So for this water, some blue, yellow, and white. Keeping that color clean should help making it look turquoise. Still want a touch of crimson in there. Just kind of feeling it as a one flat color. Oop. It's a little more yellow in there a bit. See, kind of like stepping back and seeing this is just too crisp. Kind of blend that in a bit. I'm going to add some white, create some variation. This water is kind of interesting shapes. Pulling a little bit of that mountain color because that's what's getting reflected here. That's going kind of angled. Kind of mirroring just a little bit. You know what's going on there as it comes down. Now the water does get a little darker down in here. Have that transition. It's like a little more blue. Blue and crimson, but so now that I have the lake and I want to kind of come back and finesse this part a little bit. Getting some blue and white and working that into here is kind of pushing, cooling down the shadows. Still might want a little bit of crimson in it. let's step away from the background maybe for a minute. So this tree, I'm going to create a dark green. So blue, yellow, a little crimson. Not going to completely get rid of the dark I established, but I'm trying to just think in like big clumps. Also, they're kind of drifting this way down. You know, I'm leaving, like when I'm putting a clump in, like I realize even though like this is in shadow, the light is coming from the sky. So it's going to be the top parts of the clumps that are still, they're a little bit lighter. And it's the tops that are going to be catching more and more of the light. The same here. Again, soft edges here. These branches. This one I feel like I can still go in and put some darkest darks in, which I'm going to do. Let's get some crimson, ultramarine blue, touch of yellow. These deepest little parts, again, like a lot of it underneath. You see the shadows underneath there. So, similar thing with these rocks. Shadow, we get some blue, white, some burnt sienna. One rock there. Don't want to make these too bright. And block them out. Trying to make varying size shapes of these rocks. get that and put a shadow on this one rock in this bottom left. Maybe another there, even though it's going to be in the light. Now for the light part of the ground, get burnt sienna, white, some yellow ochre, a little crimson. It's going to start there. I'm gonna get some blue, burnt sienna, and kind of push a little darker this dirt between the rocks. Kind of push a little more shadow. A little more white and yellow ochre. Get to like the center of this kind of sunspot. And then put some white into this for any rocks that are in the sunlight. Left side of this rock, establishing some shadow. I'm going to put, well first, I'm going to create a slightly lighter value, put on these trees and the shadows, keeping it pretty cool because I know, this comes from painting outside from life a lot, is I just know these trees that there's going to be reflected light from the sky. That's pretty cool. So again, thinking about like the top part of these chunks that are, you know, catching that light. I always say try and think about light like it's water, and if it was falling, it hit, you know, it'd come down, it hit this branch or whatever, and it'd spill off to the sides. And that's kind of how I think about it when I'm painting. You can see how we just create another value there while still keeping it all in the shadow. But now we can push more yellow, red, and a little bit of white. So we put just some of these tree branches and light, maybe just down here at the bottom of this one little spot that's getting kind of hit that we're choreographing here. Maybe it kind of breaks up as it goes higher. Bring it out. Maybe this little guy's getting it as well. Might be able to push it one level lighter. Yeah, if I get some blue and burnt sienna, a little bit of white, kind of like a grayish color, I'm gonna, it's a little too bright. Let's indicate this tree trunk. Burnt sienna and yellow ochre and some white. Some of the tree trunk, a little bit of cad red, push the red a little more. Indicate some of this tree trunk. Getting hit with the light in there. I think I need to push the red and the greens here a bit. I think I might be able to get away with putting more branches and sunlight. Big thing with trees is sky hole, so you can find, you know, the negative space. Like I need to come back to this mountain color and kind of finesse some of that. And good soft edges, a lot of this. Let's put in our little person here. I always like to start by just like kind of making them a silhouette first, just getting the shadow. So it's like some blue and burnt sienna. Sometimes thinking about it like a head, and then shoulders, and then just body tapers down to the legs, almost like a triangle. Kind of something like that. I'm actually going to have have their leg up on this rock. And give them a little backpack. Well, their arm out like a walking stick. Which a lot of people have out there. Like a little hat. Now it's like time to decide like what color the clothes will be. First I'm gonna make this person me. It's gonna get some yellow ochre and crimson, some white. Have them in the sunlight, so just got this arm here. And the legs. A little burnt sienna. Make the shirt white. So gonna get white and blue, a little touch of red, make it a light purple for the part that's in shadow. So just kind of blocking out the shirt there. But then kind of the front right is hitting light, so I'm putting a little more here. And give him some blue. Give me some blue shorts. Actually, it's gonna make these jeans. Let's keep it simple. Let's get some dark for the shoes, hiking boots. Now the hat. do a red hat. Contrast nicely. Coming back to this tree. Just making some smaller shapes. Some other areas in the tree trunk getting hit. With light. Some of this rock is getting hit. That sunlight. Pushing a little more red to the ground here. Some white and yellow ochre for the brightest side of the rock. I got this. I'm gonna try to push a little purple into it, but put in these. Kind of like a grayed down purple shadowed side there. This kind of darker bluish green. And the water down here. A touch of crimson. And get a reflection. These rocks. All right, so everything is there. Now it's just kind of a matter of adjusting things. I do want to put this in the light. Making sure the shadow's dark enough. Sell these rocks down here. Might want to put more rock here. It's not too bright. See if I can push tree any lighter. I think I can work this water a little better. I think I might be able to push it a little darker in value. So using negative space to kind of cut back in that tree there. Just kind of softening this a little bit. Since I darken the value of the water, I think now I can come in with these light strips and they'll work a little better. I don't know how much I want to reflect in the water. Lightly indicate. White and burnt sienna. Lighten these up a bit or warm them up. So a lot of what I'm doing is just little detailed stuff, like getting little shadows on these rocks. So with these rocks in the shadows, like what I'm thinking is like, again, I'm always thinking about the light and where the light's coming from and shining, you know, even in the shadows, like the ambient light, it's falling, it's hitting this top part. It's got a little more crimson in there. And so then it's spilling over the rock. Doing this is going to give these rocks more form. See? That rock looks round now. It's like sometimes you might have to do the opposite and kind of darken this side, also softening the edge between the rock and the ground. But just go through your painting and little areas need worked on, work on them. I want to get a little bit of light on this trunk in here. Not going to go down the whole thing, but just enough. I'm going to soften a lot of this. Part of me wants to, I want to put these logs, these cool, you know, these like tree branches and logs that are floating Get some white and blue. Can kind of start it in the shadow here. A little shadow underneath it. Some white, touch of burnt sienna when it comes into the sun here. Kind of like that. Another one, kind of going under it. Another coming over here. All right. I'm wondering, this mountain, some white and blue, just kind of brushing that into here a bit, not completely getting rid of that purple, because that purple is going to act as kind of like the darkest, deepest cracks, but I'm taking this and just maybe pushing this over here, this cool contrasted right next to this form of the tree is nice. Just kind of sits it back. A little too much. Big thing I'm like trying to pay attention to is creating a difference between this green and that green. This green up here, it's a little darker. Try to see how, if I can indicate trees. Do feel I need to do something up here. Again, cutting back into this tree. Making sure it's not like perfectly crisp cut on the edge, breaking it up with what's ever behind it. Maybe just some of this rock is getting some sun. See, like that'd be too bright. Really don't want to go too bright. Highlights of the trees. And I'm just kind of like thinking of just the parts getting hit with the most light. I'm also taking the opportunity to take some of this and sprinkle them out. Kind of like that. And don't put it on every branch. Kind of wrapping this one up. Just kind of coming back with some of my darkest value in these trees. A little bit of blue, a bit of crimson. Kind of the darkest little cracks up here, kind of at the base. A few rocks out in the water here. Kind of using this blue. Break up that shoreline. I think I like what's going on. Hope enjoyed this one. Have fun painting.